Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating, highly structured argument from NERC News, featuring historian Victor Davis Hanson. Now, regardless of where you personally fall on the political spectrum, understanding how these massive political shifts are framed is absolutely crucial to decoding today's headlines. So, we're going to break down Hanson's specific framework, detailing what he views as a radical transformation in American politics, along with the exact 5-point counter-strategy built right in response. Right off the bat, Hanson hits us with this provocative hook. The party of Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, John Kennedy, Bill Clinton, it doesn't exist. It's gone. It's gone forever. Wow. He's not just arguing that a political party evolved over time. No, the fundamental premise here is that the DNA of the American left has been entirely replaced. It's a striking claim that immediately makes you ask, well, if the old party is literally gone forever, what on earth replaced it? To unpack this whole theory, we'll follow a quick 4-part roadmap. First, the death of the old guard. Second, the modern Jacobin takeover. Third, exposing the new elite. And finally, Trump's 5 new laws. Okay, let's dive into this.
Starting with Section 1, the death of the old guard.
Before we can really analyze this new political landscape, we gotta look at what Hanson claims was permanently lost, and he paints a really stark contrast here. You know, the older Democratic Party, think the era of FDR and JFK, he describes that as an organization that fundamentally supported working Americans. It believed in equality of result, supported unions, and functioned as a pretty moderate entity. But that era, according to NERC News, is completely dead. The new version of the party? They characterize it as a radicalized mob focused almost entirely on coastal elites, essentially treating the founding of the country in 1776 as a year zero that just needs to be overwritten completely.
That brings us to Section 2, the modern Jacobin takeover.
Hanson gives this stark transformation a very specific historical label. He calls them Jacobins. Now, if you need a quick history refresher, the Jacobins were a notorious group of radicals who essentially hijacked the French Revolution of 1789. They toppled statues, attacked organized religion, destroyed property, and waged this militant war against the bourgeoisie to force a massive redistribution of wealth. So Hanson uses this historical group as a direct mirror for the modern political left. His whole argument hinges on the idea that just like the original Jacobins, today's radicals have totally hijacked what used to be a moderate movement. He then maps that 18th century radicalism straight onto a 21st century platform. This new Jacobin agenda, as he calls it, is defined by a few core stances. We're talking a belief in total open borders, a strict anti-fossil fuel agenda, support for abortion on demand up to birth, and, perhaps most significantly, replacing traditional working-class economic issues with an intense focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or, DEI and race. According to his framework, these aren't just your standard policy preferences. They are absolute proof of an uncompromising radical transformation. And the narrative actually takes this argument a step further with a really heavy-hitting claim. Hanson argues that this new hyper-focus on tribal division and racial identity actively rejects and is literally antithetical to Martin Luther King's dream. The premise here is that while the old civil rights movement aimed for a society where individuals are judged purely by the content of their character, this new Jacobin movement has regressively fixated entirely on tribalism and identity.
Moving on to Section 3, exposing the new elite.
A huge part of this argument relies on calling out the alleged hypocrisy of the individuals actually leading this movement today. It's what we can call the working class paradox. Notice the fascinating historical parallel Hanson draws here. The original 1789 Jacobins, leaders like Robespierre, well, they weren't actually downtrodden peasants. Not at all. They were incredibly wealthy, highly educated products of the French aristocracy. And Hanson argues today's modern political leaders are exactly the same. They're described as coastal elites and private jet socialists who are simply posing as grassroots revolutionaries. NERC News provides some very specific examples to highlight what they consider a massive bureaucratic grift. For instance, they point to figures like influencer Hassan Piker. He projects this communist, man-of-the-people persona online, but is noted to actually be a multi-millionaire driving around in a Porsche. Likewise, politicians like AOC and Bernie Sanders are cited as figures who preach a working-class revolution while allegedly living lives of luxury and flying on private jets. It's essentially the wealthy pretending to be manning the barricades. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, Trump's 5 new laws. Having laid out the problem as Hanson sees it, we reach the climax of the source's argument, the counter-framework. The commentary claims that Donald Trump recognized this radical Jacobin shift early on, and he built a completely new political landscape in response. They outline 5 specific rules established to combat this modern left: energy dominance, absolute sovereignty, populist nationalism, colorblind meritocracy, and institutional unmasking. Let's break down exactly what each of these means.
First up is energy dominance. According to the video, this law was designed as a direct counterattack to the left's anti-fossil fuel agenda. Hanson argues that by unleashing American oil and gas to power the economy, Trump created a common-sense policy that an energy-scarce world practically demands. And that's a reality that the Jacobins simply cannot survive. The second law is absolute sovereignty. Simply put, this is the mandate to secure the border and strictly enforce immigration law. But the source frames this as way more than just a standard policy choice. They see it as a direct existential rejection of the total open borders ideology they attribute to the radicalized left. It's establishing the absolute baseline that a nation without borders literally ceases to be a nation. Moving right along to the third law, populist nationalism. Now, does this sound like a major shift to you? Because it is. The commentary argues Trump intentionally picked up the working-class voters that the old Democratic Party had completely abandoned. This rule is all about prioritizing the forgotten American over the interests of the wealthy corporate elitists and those coastal pseudo-revolutionaries we were just talking about.
The fourth law is colorblind meritocracy. This one directly combats the race-obsessed DEI culture Hanson highlighted earlier. Actually, it circles right back to that idea of returning to Martin Luther King's dream. It's about pursuing true merit and judging people strictly by their character and competence, rather than slicing society up by tribal or racial identity. And finally, the fifth law, institutional unmasking. This is perhaps the most aggressive tactic outlined in the entire framework. It's a total refusal to play by polite establishment rules. Instead of politely debating, the source claims Trump's strategy was to actively smash bureaucratic systems and aggressively expose the underlying rot and hypocrisy of the elites who are running the show. When you put all 5 of those laws together, the conclusion drawn by NERC News is pretty absolute: adapt or perish. The commentary serves as this final warning that the modern, radicalized party simply cannot survive in the new political landscape created by these 5 common-sense rules. Basically, doubling down on radicalism will only lead to their eventual ruin. And just like that, we're at the end of our analysis. We've unpacked the historical metaphors, the policy contrasts, and this entire 5-part framework. But the original source leaves its audience with a truly compelling question. And honestly, it's the perfect one for us to end on too. Which of Trump's 5 rules do you think hits the hardest in exposing this political shift? Think about that as you digest everything we just covered in this explainer. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack all this, and as always, keep learning.